Welcome everyone for the Fingerprint eSign showcase. Over the next 60 minutes, we will be taking you on a journey through digital paperwork and where our newest feature, Fingerprint eSign, fits on this journey. I'm Aditya, Director of Marketing at Leegality, and today I'm pleased to be joined by Prateek, who is our Director of Sales and Partnerships for the BFSI sector at Leegality. Incidentally, Prateek is currently helping many banks, NBFCs, and MFIs implement Fingerprint eSign as we speak. Right? He will be sharing some key insights towards the end of this webinar and actually throughout the webinar, and he'll also be taking you through the demo of Fingerprint eSign. Again, I'll repeat, please feel free to drop questions in the Q&A box anytime during the webinar, and we'll take them up at the end of the session. At the end of the session, which we hope to wrap up in 30-40 minutes, we will also allow you to speak if you have a question. So you just need to raise your hand and we'll tell you when that time starts. Right. So before we deep dive into this feature, I want to take you through a brief introduction to Leegality itself. For a lot of you who are existing customers on this call, this won't be new. So apologies, but give me about a few minutes, 4-5 minutes, to explain to everyone else, what Leegality is. This part of the webinar also lays down the way we think of the paperwork problem as a whole and focuses on a factual understanding of what this paperwork problem means for businesses in India today. Right. So by the end of these 4-5 minutes, this 4-5 minute introduction, you will have a clear understanding and a ready framework to think about the paperwork problems in your organization and how you can solve them. So whether you decide to use Leegality or not, we are going to give you a clear framework which you can use to evaluate what is the best solution for your paperwork problem. So some people do drop off in the first few minutes just so they can get the recording. I would say wait at least for 4-5 minutes because that framework can help you whether you choose Leegality or not. Right. So trust me, yeah. So Leegality fundamentally exists to solve the paperwork problem, and the paperwork problem, contrary to popular opinion, it's not an eSign issue alone. Right. Having now helped more than 1,000 companies with 700 different types of paperwork flows, we have come to understand that paperwork is actually, as it is on the ground today for businesses, is actually a complex logistics, operations, and compliance exercise with multiple departments working in concert to ensure paperwork gets signed on a daily basis. And this is just at the ground level. At the product business management level, systems and processes for making this happen daily need to be set up and monitored to ensure that a legally compliant paperwork process is maintained at scale across offices, branches, and verticals, right? And that's where Leegality comes in. We built an end-to-end document infrastructure platform that moves beyond just eSign and eStamp and provides teams with an arsenal of feature sets that are needed to achieve the ultimate goal. And this is what we're governed by: digital transformation of paperwork. So we aren't interested in simply helping you pick your, I need to onboard an eSign tool this quarter checkbox. We want to give you business results from digitally transforming a process that your company has been doing for decades and that humanity really has been doing for centuries. Right. So to illustrate what we actually want to do with organizations and what we actually doing, here is the physical paperwork process of an MFI client of ours. It's not just a long 12-step process, but each step actually involves a lot of coordination, cost, and chance for slip-ups. All right. And now this is the same process for the MFI after Leegality. And in this, if you see, the first 4 steps are common to the previous step because they are actually the pre-document flow for group training and things like that, right? Which you can't really eliminate with a document infrastructure. It's not a paperwork process. So the actual paperwork process is condensed into a 2-step process at the end, right? And this condensation wouldn't have happened if they didn't have an end-to-end infrastructure that solved for each and every need and not just a signing and stamping need, right? So, and this digital transformation has seriously terrific business results. It's a complete transformation and elevation of the way business works, not just the way the particular process works, but the way business as a whole is done. Just like digital payments have changed the way finance is done, digital paperwork has the same way to change how many processes, critical business processes are done. And so we are currently driving digital transformation of paperwork for 1,000+ organizations across India, from leading banks and MFIs to high growth startups. Right. Now we want to hone in on the theme of this webinar, which is accessibility, right? Because the central aspect of any digital transformation, but especially when it comes to paperwork, has to be accessibility. Because with most cutting edge technology, usually what happens is the target market is often just 40 million urban Indians in the metros, right? But for most large companies, especially the ones on this call, Your customer base, your vendor base, your merchant base is much larger than this subset of 40 million. It's hundreds and hundreds of millions of people. And as a business, your goals are to reach hundreds and hundreds of millions of people, right? So the fact is that tools that are just optimized for 40 million urban Indians often fail at scale, right? Things like low connectivity, local language requirements, or even smartphone availability, things that we take for granted, are often missing from digital transformation solutions. And this end-to-end process is not possible if any part of it is inaccessible, because if any leg of the journey is inaccessible, then the entire digital process breaks down and you're forced back to that terrible physical process. This is often a reason digital transformation completely breaks down. So when we conceptualize the digital paperwork process, accessibility was at the very core of the tools that we built, right? So for example, we built our signing UX specifically to be accessible to all segments of customers. We've specially optimized even our heavy duty features to work in 2G, 3G environments. And really this theme of accessibility is why we built Fingerprint eSign, right? So let's come to the role of eSign in the process, right? eSign is a very critical trigger in this multi-layered paperwork process. The act of signing is a trigger to convert a draft into a contract, right? It's the why behind why you're doing this entire thing of paperwork, right? Let's say, like a river, you want to get from one bank to the other. The paperwork process is building that bridge, the maintenance logistics required. And the ultimate trigger though is you walking across that bridge. That's the case of sign. But in the case of eSign, there's a specific problem that crops up, right? Because eSign is nothing but a series of technical steps that you perform to affix a signature digitally. But the issue is if a signer is unable to operate those technical steps, right, then the entire paperwork process breaks down, right? So you have things like, currently in India, 3 eSign types that do most of the heavy lifting when it comes to retail paperwork use cases. So, a lot of you will be familiar with something like maybe a DSC token or a PAN eSign, which is relatively new, right? And these may work for something like a portfolio management service or a corporate banking vertical where the customer base has the ability to operate a DSC token, right? But for mass scale retail use cases, right, like MFI or mass scale banking, retail banking, right? Only 3 eSign types so far have been used at some level of scale, right? One is Aadhaar eSign via OTP. Second is Aadhaar eSign via biometrics. And the third is virtual signatures, secure virtual signatures or virtual signatures, depending on the layer of security added to it. Virtual signature is nothing but that imprint of your signature, physical imprint of your signature. But the problem is these eSign types have certain technical limitations as well, right? Aadhaar eSign via OTP, for example, requires a signer to have Aadhaar linked with a mobile, which is not possible in our experience. In about 15 to 20% of cases, this is not there. And even if it's linked, often the signer does not have access to that device that they have linked Aadhaar to. You can Google it or check on social media. There's a lot of people complaining about how when they get a new phone, they receive someone else's Aadhaar OTP, right? So both those things make Aadhaar eSign via OTP great. And let me be clear, it's great for most use cases, but for a sizable chunk, it just doesn't work. Virtual signs, right? Virtual signs fundamentally require a physical signature to exist. Someone should have a physical signature to have a digital imprint of their physical signature, right? So that also doesn't happen, right? So you see that for retail use cases, a significant chunk of your customer base cannot sign. So for corporate banking or something like that, this may not be an issue. But for mass scale retail use cases in a country like India, this does become an issue. And then we come to the final type, right? Aadhaar biometric. A lot of people have been asking us before the webinar, what's the need for a fingerprint eSign if Aadhaar biometric exists, right? But Aadhaar biometric has its own accessibility issues, right? With authentication failures and signer discomfort. And I think Prateek has a story to share specifically on Aadhaar biometric and some gaps in the process.
Right, Aditya. So as you rightly pointed out that, there are, of course, certain limitations depending on the type of customer that you are serving. What I have personally observed, especially in the microfinance domain, is that there is one common pain point when it comes to Aadhaar-based biometric authentication. And this is actually the pain point where I've seen that a lot of NBFC MFIs, when they are actually onboarding some industrial workers, maybe for the use case of opening a savings account or maybe for giving them a loan, where they are actually getting a loan document signed, what we have observed is that usually there is a high failure rate in the Aadhaar-based biometric authentication while signing the document, due to which it again emphasized the relevance of another alternative, through which these kind of customer segments can be easily onboarded.
So, and just to be clear, it's not that the fingerprint may not be clear. It's, I think, the sensitivity of the Aadhaar biometric often fails. So the fingerprint is clear, but the Aadhaar biometric may still fail. So it's that sensitivity threshold that becomes an issue and makes Aadhaar biometric usable. Again, I'm not saying these are not usable for a large chunk of use cases, but they do fall for a significant chunk of your customer base. And how do you maintain digital flows for this chunk? How do you maintain 100% digital process? Right? So really, for a substantial portion of the signer base, these things break down. All right, where customers don't have a signature, where customers either Aadhaar is not linked, right? So for things like MFI, CASA account opening, vendor onboarding, this just breaks down, and that's where fingerprint eSign comes in. So, but before we come to the demo, there is a lot of questions we receive on legal aspects, right? Because till now we've spoken only about operational issues. But when designing and developing the feature, the legal issue was foremost on our mind, right? Because any fingerprint signing solution that we build would not only need to meet the operational accessibility goals, meet the customer for the accessibility needs that they have, but it would also need to be legally compliant and secure, because fundamentally the paperwork and the signature process, it's a legal need that you do. People do it because there's a fundamental legal need that a business has to secure rights, right? You see, there are a dime a dozen API utilities out there which can help you affix a fingerprint image. But the problem is that a signature is more than just an image, right? It's a process done specifically to attest or execute a document. So the very act of signing, actually, it's not just about the image, right? It requires a trail that this act was done for this purpose, right? With a simple image affixture, there is no guarantee or trail that this image was not simply passed, from some other process, right? And this may create issues with regulators which operate on those presumptions often, right? Where they seek to safeguard against consent being used for one thing being ported to another process, right? And I know most don't do this, but the point is that the process itself must structurally be unable to do this to be secure, right? And that's where legality fingerprint eSign is different, because, and as you'll see in the demo, we don't just ensure that image is just the end outcome. We ensure that the affixture itself is traced and tracked to this very specific transaction in a way that will make it very easy when it comes to either enforcement or things like RBI audits. So now we'll come to the demo, and some of you may have further questions on the legal aspects. We'll take them up at the end of the webinar. So I'll hand it over to Prateek, who will be running through this demo.
Great, Aditya. I think these were very great insights, especially when we talk about the concept of e-signing in a country like India. And on that note, I'm going to raise the curtains. I will showcase the entire product for our fingerprint eSign. So I'm just sharing my screen. I hope my screen is visible to everybody on the forum.
Yeah. Yes, Prateek.
Sure. So this is the sandbox or the testing environment of Leegality, which you can see on my screen right now. So what I'm going to do right now is we are going to indulge in a very interesting role play where Aditya will actually pose as a client, as a MFI client, and I will be the documentation expert from Leegality who will be taking Aditya through the entire product. So here, this is the testing environment of Leegality on which the company can simply enable their users to log in. So for the information of the larger audience, our product can be consumed in two ways. Either you can use the standalone dashboard console of Leegality, or you can use our APIs to integrate with your core banking systems. So here, the first time users can simply log in through an OTP that will be triggered on their official email ID. So I just received this OTP. I'll be logging into the system. And then as soon as I feed in the OTP, this is the homepage preview of our dashboard application that you can see on my screen right now. This gives a basic sense of understanding to the user who has logged in into this application as to how many e-signing invitations have been triggered through the use of this application. And out of these many invitations, these many total number of documents have been finally completed. We consider documents to get completed once all the signers in the signing journey have completed their signing process. So I'm going to also showcase to you a very interesting concept in our application, which we term it as a workflow. Now, this is not a generic name that we often, hear in any sort of a digital solution that people are evaluating these days. This is actually a powerful feature that Leegality has built. And what this workflow allows you to do is simply set all the signing level configurations as a one-time setting. And this is only a one-time exercise, which the admin from your organization has to do. And once the signing level configurations, which are configurations like deciding how many people will sign in a signing flow, deciding what signature types they will be using to sign the document, and enabling, what kind of signature positioning has to be done on the document. All that can be as certain as a one-time setting when you are actually creating this workflow. So now what I've done is for this presentation, what I've done is I've already pre-configured a workflow where I've already predefined all the signing level configurations. And I'm going to simply run this workflow and will take you the 3-step process of how a sender actually creates the signing invitation, which is then triggered to the end customer either on their mobile number as a text message or as an email notification, or through the APIs. You can use our mobile or the web SDKs to simply see the document and complete the signing process. So it is a simple 3-step process that I'm going to demonstrate you right now. In the very first stage, I've simply selected a sample loan documentation.
Pratik, I have a question here. So you are using the template right now, but
yes,
what if I want to use my own documents beforehand? Can I do that as well? Like I've pre-populated them already.
Good question, Aditya. So we have both the functionalities available. Either you can send the pre-populated PDF files of the document, and we have recently increased the file size limit of up to 15 MB. And we have also introduced a new functionality which allows you to send multiple documents in a single signing request. So let's say, for example, if let's say it is a JLG lending use case, and let's say you have a loan application form, you have sanction letters, and you have a loan agreement. You can simply pass all these 3 documents, and the merging of all these 3 documents can happen in the legalities application. The only thing you need to be mindful about is that the file size of all the documents put together should not be exceeding 15 MB.
And Pratik, is there a workflow limit? Can multiple workflows be designed for like different document flows that have multiple different types of documents that have?
Yes, Aditya, based on the journeys, you can actually configure multiple workflows inside our application.
All right.
You can also pass the internal reference number to map this particular signing request with your own internal identifier, which could be, let's say, a unique identifier like a loan application ID. And then you just have to click on the next button. So this is the journey where I'm simply running the workflow as an operational field officer of, let's say, an MFI. And here I can simply pass on all the variable details that will change on a case-to-case basis. So let's say this is a sample loan docket, and which basically has different set of borrowers, which will be different in all the requests that I'll be triggering. So I'll simply pass a dummy value to it. Our system is capable of supporting all the regional languages, which actually helps in solving the problem of accessibility. Because in the microfinance industry, what we have observed is that most of the MFIs are operating predominantly in the rural villages of a country, where people only understand the regional languages. So this is a very big problem statement which Leegality is trying to solve. So all these details that I'm simply feeding into the dashboard can all be passed through the APIs. So just filled in a few details. In case you also want to append some KYC documents, that can also be done. So what I've done is there is a variable field for uploading a driving license. You can pass the image of the driving license in the API call, and that will simply append this KYC documents inside your loan docket itself.
And Pratik, through the API, can I auto-populate this in my flow if I want to do an integration? Or does my agent append that manually? Or is that
yes,
option
Aditya.
available?
So there are both the options which are available. So in case on a real-time basis, if you want, let's say, your field agent to fill all these details or some of these details, that is also a flexibility which is very much possible in our application. And if you simply enable this option of allow first invitee, so towards the bottom of my screen, you will see this option of allow first invitee to fill details. In case you toggle this on, you can also create this flexibility in your workflow. Now I click on the next button. So I'm done with the first leg of the process where I simply created and configured the final loan docket. And now in the second stage of the journey, you can simply configure the flow of invitees. Now here, our product is very deep in terms of not only catering to the retail use cases, where let's say if a customer wants to take a personal loan and there is just single borrower in the journey, the single borrower can sign the document, as well as our flow has been customized to fit in the larger scheme of things for MFIs, where usually in the joint liability group loan segment, we see that there are multiple number of borrowers who are involved in the process of availing a loan. So you can have multiple number of signatories that you can add in the signing journey, and you simply have to pass the value of the name and the phone number when you are actually creating a signing request. So I'll simply feed in my name here. For the purpose of demonstration, I will be feeding in the email ID, but you can also trigger this as a signing link on the customer's mobile number. Or as I mentioned, this link can also be opened in your agent's application when he is meeting the customer. Here we have certain advanced features which actually add a lot more value in the signing flow. And these are features where I've already activated a face capture. So this is a very intelligent face capture capability that has been built so as to ensure that the person who's signing the document can also have their image captured inside the audit trail, which will be generated after the process of signing is completed. So I'll be showcasing you these all features as well. And then under the signature types, as Aditya was mentioning, since Leegality is serving the most sophisticated clients, such as clients like HSBC, Barclays, who are also using our product to digitally sign high value deals. And on the other hand, we are also servicing the bottom of the pyramid market, where we have customers who are located in the rural areas doing lakhs and lakhs of transactions on a daily basis. So here what I'll do is I'll configure the virtual sign, which I've already done. And once I click on the next button, I move on to the final preview page, where as the initiator of this signing process, I can simply preview the final document, which will be sent for execution to my end customer. So here I can preview that all these details are correct. And in case there is any discrepancy, I can circle back to the previous steps and can, do the accuracy check for this request. Now, once I click on the send invitation, there will be a link that will be triggered on my email ID. So now let us move to the customer side of journey. So now you can see I simply got this invitation to e-sign the sample loan docket.
I think, is it going to be emailed in my customer journey, or because most of them don't have emails?
So Aditya, a very good question asked by you. So there are multiple ways of redirecting the customer in the signing journey. Either you can trigger a text notification to the customer, or in case if it is an agent-led model, the link can be embedded and can be opened through our mobile and the web SDKs right inside your application. So here, the signing button that you can see right now on my screen, think of it like a sign button that will be embedded onto your application. Your field agent will simply click on the sign button, and it will simply open up the mobile and the web SDKs of Leegality, where the agent can then read the contents of this loan document in his native language and can explain all the terms and conditions to the rural borrowers who might not be that tech savvy and who might not even know how to read and write. So this offering is fundamentally focused towards the audience who actually do not know how to read and write. So even in those use cases, the agent can explain all the terms and conditions in the native language of the customer and can then click on the proceed button. And then subsequently, there will be an OTP, which will be triggered by Leegality for verifying the identity of that individual. So the end customer who's sitting with the branch official or the agent who's completing this process will share this OTP. So I just got this OTP. I'll simply have to share this OTP as a customer.
So this can go to my customer's mobile because they'll have a mobile with them.
Yeah, even if the customers have a basic feature phone, then also this OTP can be triggered. And they just simply have to share this OTP with the field agent. And then the field agent will process the further steps, where since I have activated the geolocation of the customer, it is accurately capturing my latitudinal and longitudinal coordinates. And the customer will also have to allow the consent for this. So let's say if I'm completing this journey over a tablet or in my smartphone, then I'll have to give the permissions to capture my photograph, to capture my geolocation. And once that is done, so I'll have to switch on this
you have to switch off your camera.
I've just switched off my video for the Zoom call. I'll do a face capture now. So now you can see there is a real-time face capture that will be done. Also, this feature has been very smartly built, basis several nuances that we saw in the microfinance industry, where a lot of times people were trying to pose the front camera in front of the wall, and they were trying to capture the image. So there are some algorithms which have smartly built this system. So in case you try and pose this front camera in front of a wall, it will not capture your image. So there has to be a real-time person who's sitting in front of the camera in order to proceed with a face capture. Now, after the GPS and the face capture is done, which were basically the ancillary steps, now I'll simply click on this.
Pratik, can you show me the device out of curiosity? I want to understand what device might.
Sure, Aditya. So this is the Mantra's device. This is the MFS 100 device of Mantra that I'm currently plugged in with my laptop.
Have to put it in front of your face. I think there's a blur background.
Is it better now?
Yes.
By any chance?
Yes.
Okay. I mean, most of the people in the banking fraternity will be well versed with how these biometric devices are used, because a lot of them were already using it for their eKYC processes. So now I'll click on this capture fingerprint image, and I've simply placed my fingerprint on the biometric scanner device. And you can see on my screen that my fingerprint has been successfully captured. I'll now click on the proceed button. And this is a one layer of consent, which is taken by Leegality, which basically states that this biometric affixure of my fingerprint mark on the document is actually the electronic representation of my signature on the document. I uptake this consent, click on the sign button, and the document has been signed. You must have seen how simple and how hassle-free this entire signing process is. And this can not only lead to the saving of paper, your valuable time, but has a lot of impact on the way businesses are run. So now you can see I have just received a notification saying that everybody has e-signed the sample loan docket. And in this notification, there will be 2 attachments. Since this has come to me as an email notification, these 2 attachments are getting populated here. But in case the customer is doing the signing process on the agent smartphone or the tablet, then the customer will receive a text message with a URL from Leegality. And from that URL, they will be able to access the signed copy of their documents. So let's have a sneak peek into the documents which have now been digitally signed. So this is the loan docket which has been signed. You can see all the details have been accurately populated along with the image of this driving license. And here you can see, I'll just zoom in my screen so that this impression of my fingerprint image is visible, where I've simply authenticated it using the fingerprint eSign, and it shows a date and the timestamp on which the signature was affixed on the document. I'll showcase you the second attachment, which is basically the audit trail generated by Leegality. Now, this audit trail is basically a document where we simply compile all the steps in the signing journey. So in the signing process, right from the time when the signer initiated this process, we capture that activity log with a date and a timestamp. We capture other important details such as the IP address of the person, such as the operating system, as well as the browser that was used in the transaction. Then it starts with the journey of the signer, where I simply opened this document at so-and-so date and time. At so-and-so time, the OTP got generated, and at so-and-so time, the OTP was verified by me. And once the OTP verification was done, I immediately completed a face capture. I did a location capture where my location has been captured. And it also explicitly shows the consent recorded in the audit trail. So this actually gives the legal sanctity to the entire process. And the fact that this audit trail has been digitally signed by Leegality makes it a secured electronic record in the eyes of law. So I think that was all, Aditya, in terms of the product demonstration from my side.
Thanks, Pratik. So I think we have a few questions in the chat. I think some we'll answer at the end, but some we can answer now. So one question is, can this work for remote signing or is this for in-person signing? So yeah, the answer to that question is this currently is useful for assisted journeys, like banks and MFIs who are having branch or field-led assisted journeys. This feature is suitable for that. The second question is, can we pass the signature placement coordinates via the API request? Absolutely. The signature coordinate fixing is something you can configure either through the dashboard one time, or you can configure it in the API. So that's absolutely not an issue at all. So yes, someone has asked a follow-up question to that assisted journey. Yes, it's only for an assisted journey where the agent or a branch officer or a field officer is meeting the customer, right? And we see in a lot of retail use cases that assisted part is still required, where companies just want to eliminate paperwork because it has a lot of logistical back-end issues and a lot of customer experience issues, but they don't want to eliminate the assistance provided by a field or branch officer. So if you're hoping for using this feature for a remote use case, it can't be used for a remote use case. There's one question on verification, and I think that's been answered in chat. But we'll come to that at the end as well. Shubhash, if you could share this slide. So some questions we haven't answered right now, we will take it up at the end, right? So to recap, here are the technical requirements you need at the business end for Fingerprint eSign. Biometric devices. Currently, we support Mantra, MFS 100, and working on support for 2 others. If you have a device not mentioned here, don't worry. We can work something out. Simply let us know what device you have. Right? It works on Windows and Android operating systems and on any type of smart device. Right? Pratik, in your experience, you were mentioning that all these devices are usually anyway present for existing processes. Can you?
Yes, Aditya. So basically, the availability of biometric scanning device was not looked upon by MFIs as an additional cost overhead, because most of the MFIs, and especially those who were working in the business correspondent models, where they have partnered with a bank, were already using these devices for eKYC purposes. And as a natural progression, the very same devices can actually be used for doing a fingerprint e-signing in a plug and play manner without any additional cost implications.
Great. Thank you, Pratik. So another big issue that comes to new technology, and I know a lot of you on this call, because a lot of you have actually told us this before the call, and a lot of you will relate to this, is integration or implementation of the search solution, right? So as Pratik showed you in the demo, we actually put that power of digital transformation literally at your fingertips. So even if, say, your tech teams are booked out for the next 2 quarters for this particular project, you can actually, through the dashboard itself, use 100% of our functionality and have automated journeys for your field and branch officers. I know for the fact that one of our clients, for example, their API integration was delayed by 10 months because of their allied partner, LOS partner, or something like that. They decided to go with Leegality at a dashboard level across 1,000+ branches. Right. So dashboard is an easy to use solution that's possible. But at the same time, I get it that you also would want to eventually do an API integration, right? So that's also easy, right? So all you need to do is set up the workflow. So your business team doesn't have to rely on the tech team for that. You can literally sit at a 10 a.m. meeting, and by 12 p.m., within 2 hours max, and I'm being very conservative with my estimates here, you can configure the entire workflow for this with just a mouse and a keyboard, right? After that, for your tech teams, right? Tech team only needs to take and integrate the workflow ID, which can be integrated in less than a day, if possible, depending on bandwidth, can be 1 or 2 days. And with testing, you can literally complete integration within 3 weeks for this entire digital journey, right? This lowers your implementation costs and really keeps all stakeholders happy, right? And the best part about this, let's say 6 months down the line, you need to make a change to the flow, right? How many times have we seen this, right? You don't need to call your IT team again, right? Your business team can simply log into the dashboard, your admin account, note, and change whatever you need in the workflow. And just to be clear, only the admin accounts can do this change, and not maybe if you're giving it to field and branch officers, you can restrict access to change the workflow, right? So authorized people can log in, simply change it with a mouse and keyboard, and that's it. The API flow, which is tagged to the workflow, will automatically change, right? So if you really feel, want to implement a test fingerprint eSign after this webinar, literally give us a call or email us right away. We'll set the ball rolling to make you go live ASAP. If you want to go live and start showing ROI even in your end of quarter board meeting, we can enable that for you. We can do that. Because as we said, we're solely focused on your digital transformation and solely focused on making it happen very, very fast. So to give you an understanding of what we mean by this, Pratik wanted to share a story of how this feature was built in the first place.
Sure, Aditya. So actually, this was a very interesting tale of how we actually embarked on the journey of building this fingerprint-based signing facility. And here I'll talk about some behind-the-scenes stuff which actually led to the birth of this feature in our diversified product stack. So basically, this request came in after I was engaging in with one of the largest MFIs based out in South India, and that was sometime in the month of September last year when they actually wanted to fully digitize their rural customer onboarding for their joint liability group loans that they were offering in the core rural villages of South India. And then they actually stumbled upon one huge bottleneck during the course of our discussion and assessment of the solution, where they realized that a larger chunk of their customers, somewhere close to 30 to 40%, did not know how to read and write. And this was where they started deliberating on whether this will be a partial sort of a digital transformation, or this can actually be scaled up to implement at a country level, because this MFI was operating across India in multiple rural villages of a country. So on that note, we actually identified that this is actually a bigger problem which needs a solution. And then we started doing some hypothesis and internal investigation, investigating the legal aspects of this offering and how this can actually be matured into a solution which can be replicated for the larger set of MFIs. So in this case, the client's thought process was absolutely crystal clear right from the day one. They did not aspire for a half-baked solution which can digitize the onboarding of just, let's say, 50 to 60% of the customers that they were sourcing. But the idea was to implement it holistically for an entire customer base that they were sourcing. Also, there was another angle to it where they were also evaluating another onboarding tool for the last 1 year, and they had already onboarded that tool for e-signing some of their internal routine agreements. But somehow they realized that once they went back to their already onboarded partner for this, there were a couple of promises that they offered that they will be able to build this solution within a span of next 3 to 6 months. But somehow nothing was getting materialized. And this is how, when they actually came to Leegality and they realized that our product is not just a e-signing tool or an e-stamping solution, but it is much beyond that. And this basically ties up with the fact that we are a comprehensive document automation platform, where we have tried to build our platform in a manner that it can be replicated for any of the nuanced use cases in the lending industry. And with that, we started developing this feature, and within just a span of 30 days, we were able to roll out this feature on time. And this was actually implemented for this MFI. So this was the behind the scenes stuff, which I wanted to share with all of you.
And I think this really highlights what we've been saying from the beginning, that our goal is to help you digitally transform the process. We're not satisfied with just onboarding with you. We are going to follow up and push you to actually digitally transform that process. So now let's flip the perspective and go from a look. We've been looking at it from a company side perspective, from a business side perspective, right? Now let's flip it and go from a customer perspective. And yeah, Pratik, you were telling me about a field visit that you actually did last quarter.
Right. I think so. Last quarter, I actually happened to visit one of a prominent MFI client of ours based out in Bombay. And we actually went to a field visit. So there was a rural village in a place called Ambernath, where we actually went to see the ground level challenges which most of the MFIs were facing when a bunch of customers were flocking onto the branches. And this was where we actually realized that, usually these customers who were coming to take a loan from these MFIs, they have to literally travel a day and come to these branches. So they actually have to budget for a day's time to be able to ensure that they sign up all the relevant loan documentation, and then they get the disbursement by that particular MFI. So this was in itself a huge nightmare, a logistical nightmare, where the customer has to compromise on their wages, has to compromise on their time, and then also typically will end up spending at least 2 to 3 hours of their precious time completing the signing process, which we realize is actually a problem which needs a solution. And then what we proposed to them was that let's do a POC, let's do a pilot. And here, let's do both the processes. Firstly, you get all your loan documentation physically signed, and then you simply use our technology to onboard your customers. And we realized that our product was able to seamlessly onboard a group of 8 members within a span of a few minutes. while their process, which was completely physical, where people have to sign on each and every page, was actually consuming a lot more time. So that is where it brings us to the customer friendliness part of it, where the customer experience is also equally important. In a physical journey, you actually have to sign on each and every page on the relevant sections where it asks you to sign. But in the digital flow that you must have seen, you must have observed that I just simply placed my fingerprint impression on the biometric scanner, and the signing was automatically captured on all the pages wherever I wanted it to be placed. So I think that's the beauty of transforming the solution digitally and of changing the actual dynamics of how you onboard your customers.
Great, Prateek. A terrific perspective that we often don't hear in such conversations. And I think I wanted to ask you a bit about the tentative use cases that you are personally helping to implement, right? Can you just tell me a
Sure.
bit more about it? Because I think we also have a question in chat about what, and I think this syncs in well with this. What is the current adoption level across MFIs? One,
Sure.
yeah, and you can tell us a bit about that.
So I think over the last 1 year, 1.5 years, we have actually seen a tremendous amount of interest which has been generated from a lot of MFIs who are not only willing to digitize their entire customer onboarding processes, but also there is an inherent reason to it. In the last 1.5 years, people have actually transformed the way they are working. So like, and pandemic has been like one good factor which has actually pushed a lot of MFIs to digitize their entire flows because of the inabilities of a lot of institutions to actually go and meet the customers. And that is where the role of legality comes in. So if I talk about from the implementation perspective, in the last 1 year's time, we have onboarded clients like Suryodaya Small Finance Bank. We have onboarded clients like Arohan Financial Services. And these people are actually using our solution to digitize their loan documentation at the grassroots level.
So
And the use cases,
yeah, just to add to that, though, if the question was specifically about fingerprint eSign, this is a very new feature that we launched last month, or maybe 6 to 8 weeks back. So currently, we have a lot of MFIs in the testing stage of it. But I think within the next 7 to 10 days, I think a few of them are scheduled to go live. So we will definitely be continuing to bring you stories from how that experience also has been. Right, this is not just a one-time webinar where we're going to leave you at that. We will be sharing you the details of how this journey is actually going to progress going forward for this specific feature. But in terms of overall MFIs, as Prateek said, for the past 1.5 years, there's been good adoption.
Sure. Also, Aditya, talking about the use cases that we have generally observed in the industry and overall in the market, I think one of the prominent use cases that has come on our table is about the digitization of the joint liability group loan agreements, where most of these NBFC MFIs are providing a low ticket size loan to women entrepreneurs in the rural areas for the income generation purpose. So that is one use case. And apart from that, a lot of inclination has come in from a lot of small finance banks and a lot of microfinance institutions when they are actually serving as a business correspondent for a lot of banks, and which is where this use case of opening a current account or opening a savings account for the rural audience is also being contemplated with a lot of banks that we are working with. Apart from this, another prominent application of a virtual fingerprint e-sign could be in the FMCG and the manufacturing sector, where let's say think of it like a giant like a PNG or an HUL who are willing to onboard a pawn shop based out in a rural area, and they want to complete the documentation with them in terms of completing the vendor onboarding. So I think there can be a wide reach of this particular solution, which can actually be explored.
Great, Prateek. And honestly, these are some use cases. If you think of any use case where physical fingerprints are currently being collected on paperwork, you can use fingerprint eSign. As you said, it's a very, very new feature, literally launched last month. So we will be seeing go lives very, very soon within days. And yeah, we will see what all use cases people use it for. Ultimately, the choice is in your hands of what you decide to use it for. So I think before we move on to the Q&A, just wanted to give people a heads up on how they can reach out to us. All right. If you want to explore fingerprint eSign for your business, right? If you are a Leegality customer, you can simply contact your account manager today or email us at support@leegality.com. right? If you're not a Leegality customer, simply email us at enquiry@legality.com or visit legality.com/fingerprint-esign. So I think simple thing if you want to remember is enquiry@legality.com. We'll discuss your use case in detail. We can give you some more details on how the implementation will actually work, and we'll map out an actual fingerprint eSign demo for your specific use case. You can give us templates and we can do it for your specific template, and you can actually do testing runs and see how it will actually work on the ground. Right. Before now, let's move on to the open Q&A. So before we open the floor for people to raise their hand and ask questions, there are quite a few questions which we've not answered yet in the chat. So I just want to address those first. So to one question asked about, can you use the mobile remote fingerprint capability, where mobile uses fingerprint to actually enter a smartphone, right? So I don't answer the chat, that may have been missed, right? So I just want to answer it verbally as well. Currently, mobile authentication technology, where you use the fingerprint to unlock the mobile, it currently does not allow, it does not have any open or exposed APIs to actually pass that coordinate through, right? So currently, it's not technically feasible to do that for remote signing, right? The other question is on Aadhaar details, right? I think there have been two questions on Aadhaar, where, let me just pull it up from chat again. The fingerprint being verified with Aadhaar records. This is not the case. So we don't do that because one, we don't store Aadhaar records anytime at any point in time in the journey. Second, fingerprint eSign is an alternative to when Aadhaar eSign is not feasible, when the Aadhaar authentication itself breaks down, right? So Aadhaar does not come into the fingerprint eSign journey at any step of the way. Fingerprint eSign is simply a way to digitally transform an existing physical process of a fixture of fingerprint on a physical piece of paper with additional securities like an OTP authentication and the fact that the fingerprint image itself secures the document and tamper proofs the document itself, right? So to people asking about the Aadhaar part, it has nothing to do with Aadhaar, and we don't at any point in time store Aadhaar details or Aadhaar data. And I think there's one question also we've received in private of the fingerprint itself. Do you store the biometric? Because we don't, because that would be a violation of we are compliant with data privacy law. So we do not store or harvest the biometric data. We simply affix that image on the document itself. Think about today when you're collecting fingerprints on your paperwork, right? That is not deemed to be storage of biometric data. It's simply on your paperwork. We do the same thing. What we do store the logs of are the fact that the authentication happened, right? And that's a regulatory legal thing where we store the fact that this authentication has happened, but the biometric data itself is not stored by Leegality in any way, right? We're solving the paperwork execution journey. We're not solving any verification issues, right? We're ensuring legally compliant paperwork journeys. Now, another question that we received is your fingerprint eSign valid agreement in the court of law? Yes, it is. I mean, and we've told you why. So just to reiterate, it's both one, an OTP gateway to a registered phone, which is shown in the audit trail, right? Showing that the specific transaction was done. Second, it's a fingerprint image being affixed, just like is done in the physical flow today. And third, the very technology we use for the fingerprint on the document secures the document itself from being tampered. And this is all reflected in a secure audit trail, which is also recognized under the Evidence Act, having presumptions of validity, right? It is completely legally valid. Everything we do is developed on the prism of both operational utility and legal validity. We ensure that you never have to compromise on legal compliance issues for the sake of digital transformation. We give you slick digital journeys which are fully legally compliant. So let me see if there are any other questions. Can we get the recording, Sabina? Yes, we will be sharing the recording within 48 hours, and we will also be uploading it on our YouTube. Yes, there's a follow-up question to signature coordinates. Of if the coordinates are fixed in the workflow and we use an API approach to pass the coordinates, which coordinates will be used, the one in API or the one configured in the workflow? So just a quick answer to that question. So how API integration works is, you might be thinking of it in terms of in the API integration, I have to configure each and every step of the process. We eliminate that completely. All you need to do is access the dashboard as a business team. You don't even need your tech team at this point in time. You simply, with a mouse and a keyboard, set everything there, including signature coordinates, right? And then you simply integrate that workflow into the API, right? Now, if you want to use coordinates in the dashboard itself, there is a place where you can actually just put in the coordinates you want. So there is a single window for even your API integrations where there is no chance of you having any conflicting code with each other. There's a single window to do it. So even for API integration, if you want to, you have the CSV version of the coordinates or the JSON coordinates, you can simply input them in the dashboard itself to ensure that there is nothing, there's no conflict at any point in time. Right? Happy to show you this in detail in a very detailed demo of actually showing you these features. We couldn't, unfortunately, because of time constraints in the webinar, but really happy to do that offline. Yes, it's available through API. I think we received another question. So I think this seems to be a very recurring question, and understandably so. Absolutely everything on Leegality, not just Fingerprint, eSign, can be done either through the dashboard or the API. We don't sacrifice one for the other. What you can do through dashboard, you can do through API. What you can do through API, you can do through the dashboard, right? Absolutely flexible. We've configured over 700 flows both through dashboard and API. Is the option currently available in our sandbox to test for existing Leegality customers? Great question. If it's not right now, so it depends on the type of testing sandbox that you have, depending on if you are on a corporate or enterprise plans. I think it is activated. If not, simply drop an email to support@leegality.com and we'll activate it for you in your existing testing account. We'll also be putting a video up on YouTube and sharing it with you about how to actually switch it on from your dashboard as well once it's activated. And yes, another question is, are you offering both Aadhaar sign and eSign? Yes, we offer Aadhaar eSign. So if you think about eSigns in India, there are about 12 different ways to eSign in India right now. Leegality offers all of them, right? This webinar was about a specific new eSign that we launched, but yes, absolutely any eSign option is available for any use case. So how is Fingerprint different from Aadhaar biometric? I think Prateek, do you want to take that? Like, how would a Fingerprint eSign differ from an Aadhaar biometric type of eSign?
Sure.
What are the operational issues there?
So basically, these are two fundamentally different offerings. In case of Aadhaar eSign, you have three modes of authenticating the customer. Either you can have an OTP-based authentication, where the OTP will go on the customer's Aadhaar linked mobile number. That is one. Second is you can have a biometric-based authentication, for which the prerequisite is that you have to plug in the biometric device with your laptop or the smartphone for doing the authentication. And thirdly, there is an iris authentication. So these are the three subsets under the Aadhaar eSign through which the authentication of customer can happen and a digital signature can be affixed onto the document. This is one. Now, when it comes to the fingerprint-based eSign, so this is basically a subset of our virtual sign. So under the Leegality's virtual sign, there are again three subsets. One is where you can simply scribble and draw the impression of your signature using your fingers on the smartphone. That is one. And secondly, there is a template mark of your name that will populate on the screen. You as a customer simply have to select that, give a layer of consent, and the signing will be done. And then comes the third, which is the fingerprint-based eSign, where you can use the same set of biometric scanner that you will use for Aadhaar eSign authentication. The difference here is that there is no actual authentication which is happening with the UIDI database. This is only an OTP-based authentication, where Leegality will first check the identity of that individual, who will verify by feeding in the OTP, and then will simply place the finger mark on the biometric scanner, followed by a consent, and the signature will be affixed. So this is the fundamental differences between Aadhaar eSign offerings and the virtual offerings that we have.
Right. Great, Prateek. One other key question on biometric device procurement. How to procure it. So if your organization is not using biometric devices already, we will connect you with how to procure it. It's very easy. We have helped more than 100 companies actually procure these devices. It's very simple and it's very economical as well. Prateek, anything you want to add on that biometric device front?
No, I think we are actually right now live on Mantra's devices. So Mantra is one of the approved UIDF devices vendors
No,
that are,
procurement,
yeah.
like say they don't use a biometric device right now. I mean, you because you are specifically dealt with organizations who've not had the device, but you help them kind of procure it. So how has that experience been?
So that experience has been good in the industry, especially in the MFI industry. We have seen there are 3 to 4 companies which are very prominent. One is Mantra, which are providing these biometric devices. Then we have Precision. Then there is Evolute. So all these devices which are approved by UIDI are already supported in the Leegality software, and we can help you connect with any of these vendors, and we can help you procure the biometric scanner device as well.
Great, Prateek. So I'm just looking through the chat to see if I don't want to miss any question. I hope I've answered all questions. Apologies if I missed it. I am going through the chat just to see that, ensure that I've actually answered every question. So actually, just also as a just general announcement, if you want to also ask a question orally, like not through chat, you can raise your hand and we'll activate speaking access for you. For anyone who wants to drop off, feel free to drop off. So we're done with the entire webinar section. And I think we have answered all questions in chat. If we have not, please reach out to Prateek or I on LinkedIn or Leegality. It's not out of intention that we've missed it. It's just there have been a lot of questions in chat. I think we've covered all. But Prateek and I are happy to stay back and answer more questions. We don't have we are happy to stay back. So if whoever wants to drop off can, we will be sending a recording of this entire session within the next 48 hours. Whoever has questions, happy to stay on and have a more detailed discussion. Simply raise your hand. We'll activate speaking access for you, or ask us in the like Q&A box or chat. Right. I think there's one question, sorry, that we missed, is how is the document upload verified? Not sure what that question means, but the fact is that that's your internal process of like who has access to upload the document, or whether you're directly passing a document from say your LOS or core systems, right? So we cannot verify for you whether it's the correct document. At the same time, we do have a feature that allows you to build a flow that does that, called a maker checker flow, a reviewer flow, where before it reaches the signers, you can have someone from your organization receiving the document and reviewing it and giving it a okay or a no. Right. So that feature is available. We don't have any auto verification because ultimately what document you want to upload is your internal organization's call. But you can build a checker flow where someone authorized in your organization can receive documents and check them before they're sent out for signing. So that's completely possible. So I think Prateek has just dropped his coordinates in the comments. Any questions on commercials, you want to see a demo, you want to get it activated in your sandbox, please reach out to prateek@leegality.com, or his phone number that's there either on WhatsApp, or you can give him a call. Prateek and I, Aditya Patel, Prateek Jain, are available on LinkedIn. Please feel free to connect and DM us. You can go to our website, leegality.com. There's a form there. You can reach out to us in that way. We're happy to answer any and all questions. I think we have answered 100% of questions here. My apologies if we haven't. Not out of intention, just purely because I may have just missed a question. But you can still continue to ask us after the webinar as well, on our website, on LinkedIn, on Prateek's email that he's dropped in. Happy to answer, happy to show you how it can work for you. Happy to take you through a more detailed, slower demo that is not constrained by the webinar format. I think if that's it, no one has raised their hands either. Yeah, I think we just give it 2-3 minutes, Prateek. If no one raises their hand in 2-3 minutes, I think we can end the webinar. But meanwhile, people feel free to drop off. We will send you the recording within 48 hours on email. Just ensure emails from leegality.com don't go into your promotions tab. That's the only thing I'll say if you want the recording. Otherwise, you can subscribe to our YouTube channel and we will be uploading the recording there as well. Prateek, anything you want to close with?
No, I think it was a great presentation, and I think we have covered everything that we wanted to cover. Feel free to ask any questions, or else we can close the session.
Right. I'm just, again, I'm very scared that I missed out on a question. So I'm just going through the chat again. But some people have written out to us saying, requesting a call back, we will reach out to you. Good mix of people today. So thank you everyone for joining. We had a good mix of existing Leegality customers, a good mix of people who are not yet Leegality customers, to which I'll say, what have you been doing till now? No, I'm just kidding. Hopefully we can, hopefully we can connect and discuss how we can help you. And if you think we can't help you, then fair enough. But happy to see you on this panel as well. You, at least I hope you have a framework by which to evaluate any solution. We also have a few people from competitors. Nice to see that. Always good to see. Hoping best practices get adopted across the industry. With that, I think we'll end the webinar. Again, if we have not answered a question, you still have a burning question after this, please reach out to us. Please reach out to us. We don't want to not answer your questions. We do want to answer your questions. And if we receive enough questions offline as well, we will also release a public video answering those questions in public, right? So we're absolutely happy to do that. So please continue to bug us with questions even after this webinar. We are happy to answer them, happy to take you through a detailed demo. Again, thank you for attending on this Thursday morning. Have a great rest of the week. Have a great weekend. Hope everyone is safe.
Great.
Thanks
Thank
so
you,
much,
everyone.
Prateek.
Thank you so much, Aditya. Thank you so much, everyone, for attending this webinar.